Thank you, everyone, and good morning. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about metaphors and the way they affect how we design software. Let me introduce myself. I'm Nicolò Pignatelli, and I'm Director of Engineering in GFG Commerce Technologies. This is a Berlin-based e-commerce service company. So today I'm going to tell you a story, and the title that this story can, maybe we can give a title to this story, and I will call it Lego block in financial transaction world. And you may ask yourself, okay, what Lego block have to do with financial transactions? And this is the same question that I asked myself when I found this Lego block in a code, in a piece of code that I was looking at some point in my career. This was a class, PHP class, that I was looking at, and I saw this name, synthetic context Lego block, and you can see the namespace. It's transaction rule engine, so it's financial transaction context. And I asked myself, what this class means? Why is it there? And I start wondering, because I had to understand what this code was doing, because this code was part of a service which was done by a different team, and then we decided, okay, we need to re-implement the service that this code was fulfilling, because the team that created this code was gone, and the service itself was creating more problems than the ones it was meant to solve. So we said, this is something that you usually don't want to do. I mean, completely throw existing code away and re-implement it from scratch. But in that case, probably it made sense to do it. So that's what we did. We tried to get all the knowledge out of the old code and build it from scratch again. So back to my story. I was checking this class, and I could not understand the role of this class and why it was called Lego block. Okay, Lego block can be, I don't know, something red, something which looks like a brick, but it didn't fit the transaction picture. So I started looking around, and the classes all around this one, and the data flow. So I could understand, for example, immediately the data flow of the service, but I could not understand the meaning of the pieces there. And after a lot of investigation, I understood that, a lot of investigation, I mean hours of investigations, I understood that the author of this class, when he named this class Lego block, he meant to represent something which could be replaced. So with the name Lego block, he actually wanted to say, okay, this class can be, an instance of this class can be replaced by an instance of another class doing more or less the same thing. So this was the meaning that the author of this class wanted to convey with this name. Okay, fair enough. A Lego block, you can actually replace a Lego block with another one if it fits the same place, but it's not replaceability. It's not the first meaning that you come up with. It's not the first concept that you come up with when you talk about Lego blocks, right? And when you talk about Lego blocks, we associate them with games and playing and bricks and children. But replaceability, nevertheless, that was clearly a metaphor, which I mean surprised me a little bit, because I never realized that we actually use metaphors in our code so explicitly. And I just started looking around the code and check if in other files, in other source code files, we could find other metaphors. And guess what? Almost every file in our source code of that service, but not only that service, had at least one metaphor inside. A variable name, a class name, some pattern, some construction of the code language. Everything was a metaphor. So I started digging more into it, and I actually found out that basically our whole concept of software design is based on metaphors. Some of them more explicit, some of them more implicit, but they are there definitely. I don't know you, but I really don't like to have subconscious processes in my mind, especially when I do my job. And I mean, it cannot be a coincidence that we all design software using metaphors. So there is something going on in our mind, no? And this is something common to all human beings, apparently, or at least to the programmers. I don't know if they are different from other human beings, but I assume all human beings have these processes. So I started studying metaphors. And of course, I didn't know anything about those, so I started from the basics, so from the definition. So what is a metaphor? Well, we can start from the mathematical definition of a metaphor. And the mathematical definition of a metaphor is a very complex identity expression. I'm just leaving the expression here in the next slide, but I don't know if you can understand it. Actually, it's quite simple. X equals Y. Something, I say something, I mean something else. Let me be a little bit more explicit about this. X equals Y. We can express this also in terms of domain transfer, meaning that X in domain A, I bring this concept, and I take this concept and I bring it to domain B, and it assumes a completely different meaning still related to the metaphor source, to the domain source, but of course it's completely different. Let's give some examples maybe. So we are in Denver these days. We have very great sunshines, no? So let's understand what sunshine means in this concept. In this context, we are in the meteorology context. Sunshine means that sun is bright, weather is warm. You have fewer no clouds there in the sky. Now, if we transpose actually this term to another context, the context of feelings, what do you have? For example, you have sentences like this: "You are the sunshine of my life." And of course for me, I don't know, I hope also for you, when you say to your partner, "You are the sunshine of my life," you don't mean, "Darling, if I get close to you and I stay there for long, I get skin cancer." I really hope you don't mean that. But of course, what you mean is that you have warm feelings inside and you want to stay there under the influence of your beloved one because it makes you feel great, makes you feel good. Let's give another example here. So this is how they collect garbage in Venice. Even garbage collection in Venice is beautiful somehow, no? So there is this boat which goes through the channels, picks the garbage bins, and then just continues. Garbage collection, where do we find this concept other than city environment? Yes, but in general programming languages. This guy, John McCarthy, is the inventor of Lisp, and he's also the inventor of garbage collection. First guy that came up with the concept. How did he come up with the term garbage collection? Well, it's quite easy to grasp. He wanted to represent some new concept in his domain, and he thought, okay, I have some blocks of memory that I cannot use. They are disposable, and I need some sort of mechanism that collects them and make them free again. Do you see the connection? It was really easy for him to call. It was really natural for him to call this mechanism garbage collection because the metaphor in this case was quite fitting the case. Third example, this is the satellite view of a storm. Again, meteorology domain. Storm means heavy rains, winds, flying cats, whatever. Where do we find the concept of storm? Exactly. It's even storming. But in this case, the metaphor is a little bit more complex because there is a noun attached to it, event. And I think the metaphor is not Alberto, by the way, is the paper roll. Huh? And I think this is a very beautiful metaphor for one single reason, because it exactly goes to the core practice of event stormings. event storming, you have, at the beginning of event storming, you have a chaotic session of sticky notes that everyone puts onto the paper roll. And you cannot have an effective event storming session if you don't have the storm, if you don't have the chaotic process of everyone puts in sticky notes together there. So I think, metaphorically speaking, this is a very good fit, this is a very good name. So I understood eventually that metaphors are not just a way for us to come up with new concepts, but going more deep into it, they are basically the tool that we have, that our mind have to create language. So they're basically responsible, metaphors are responsible for the terraformation of every human language. You can think about every human language as a lasagna. Why lasagna? Can anyone tell why human languages are like a lasagna? No? Yeah. You spoiled my joke. I wanted to say because you're not Italian, then you don't understand lasagna. But yes, layers. When I tried these metaphors with some friends, someone was getting the metaphor and someone was not. So I said, okay, there is maybe something not wrong here, but something to understand. And then I tried this picture when talking about the terraformation of languages, of human languages, and everyone immediately got it. Ah, okay. You can see that you have layers there. I mean, those are more explicit than the lasagna. And you see fossils there, dead things. Those fossils basically are the metaphors of yesterday, of the last century, of the last millennia. And it basically works like this. When you have to come up with a new concept, you must resort to a metaphor. There is no other way for your brain to come up with a name for a new concept. And of course, when you invent a new metaphor, that metaphor is vivid, it's there, you can recognize it as a metaphor, you still can link it to the source domain. But what it happens later is that if the metaphor is effective, then everyone starts using the new name associated with the new concept without recalling anymore the source of the metaphor. And of course, this is the first generation of people, the one that invented the metaphor. The next one will probably cut the cord completely with the metaphor source and will be just left with the association between the name, the new name, the metaphor, and the concept. So no metaphor anymore, the metaphor is died, the metaphor is fossilized, and that's how we create language. And if you think that this is going forward since the cognitive revolution of the Homo sapiens, we had some millennia of layers and fossilized metaphor. Let's make an example. What's this? television. Okay. If we think about the etymology of television, okay, you have clearly two parts of the word. Vision, that's clear for everyone. Tele, a distance. Yes, tele is the ancient Greek prefix for a distance. The one that provided me with the right answer, of course, know the meaning of tele, but a lot of people, they don't even know what they don't know what this prefix stands for. They just call this device television. It's a television. It's what's supposed to mean other than that device. This is a very typical example of that metaphor. So someone invented at some point the television, and they said, okay, we need to give this device a name. And okay, this device can enable people to see pictures which are happening at distance. So we already have the telegraph, we already have the telephone. So okay, that's easy. Then this is the television. How many times do you think that television actually means vision at distance? Never. So this is why metaphor is going to be dead in very short time. I think that next generation won't even know that television means seeing at distance like Legolas does. No? Okay, back to the lasagna metaphor. I was telling you that someone got the metaphor, but some other people that I presented the metaphor to, they just didn't. And I tried to understand why this is happening for someone and for someone else this is not happening. And I researched a little bit, and my conclusion was that there is a concept while talking about metaphors, which is called metaphor framing. So what is a metaphor frame? A metaphor frame is the subset of concepts which belongs to the metaphor source, which you want to bring to another domain to create a metaphor. So when we talk about a lasagna, and I wanted to do a metaphor about the terraformation of the language, I said, okay, which concepts are related to a lasagna? Food, generically speaking, tradition, tastiness, Italy, and hot temperature. And these are easy concepts to relate to a lasagna, but not everyone got the last one, which was layers. Okay, lasagna is a layered dish. You have pasta sheet and tomato and then mozzarella. I will explain the recipe another time. So my question went towards, okay, what's the mechanism that makes this communication happen in a good way? Why someone is getting this, why someone is not, and what makes a metaphor a good metaphor? A good metaphor in terms of everyone is getting it immediately. Well, in neuropsychological field, there is a term which is called ligament. And ligament is the Latin for link. Okay, it comes from legare, which means to bind together, basically. And this is basically the connection between the metaphor source and the metaphor target. And if the ligament of the metaphor is too threadbare, not everyone is going to get the metaphor, and not getting the metaphor, in this case, is painful for our brain, and that's where exactly our cognitive dissonance is kicking in. How many of you what cognitive dissonance is in general? Great. Let me give you some examples. I want to play with your brain a little bit, if you allow me. So, read this. This is called Stroop test, or Stroop test, I don't know the pronunciation. And, of course, your brain is fighting because you have two experiences, one related to colors and one related to reading, and they are fighting each other. It's blue, but it's red. I cannot even read it. Yeah, red, but it's yellow. Yellow, but it's green. Green, but it's blue. During yesterday keynotes, Rebecca, one of the slides of Rebecca was a clear example of cognitive dissonance, and a Stroop test as well. This slide. This is an amazing slide because I was trying to read this and I actually had some difficulties. Is it a yes? Is it a no? You don't get it immediately. And of course, then after some instance, you get that this is exactly the intention of the picture, to confuse yourself, that you don't know if it's actually a yes or no. Another example, if you followed Von Vernon talk, was this rotating mask. Who was there? And I mean, when the mask is rotated and you can see the inside of the mask, of course, you expect to see the inside, but you actually see something which looks like the outside face of the mask. And that's where your cognitive dissonance kicks in, because your experience of the past is conflicting with what you're experiencing right now. This is exactly cognitive dissonance. One more example. Can you caption this? No, I won't tell you. No, actually, I will. But it's. I mean, this awkward moment of silence when you struggle to understand what this picture wants to mean. Who said that? You're a genius. Amazing. Thanks. Yes, so the caption is that escalated quickly. It's just a joke, it's stupid. But if you don't get it, then you're not happy because your brain cannot make sense of this image. And when your brain cannot make sense of things, it's not happy because this is a trait that we inherit from very, very old times where when we were gatherers and hunters. And when something was moving in the weeds, we needed to know exactly if it was a beast that could attack and kill us, or if it was a prey that we could eat. And until the moment we don't know, the cognitive dissonance was struggling to understand what was going on there. So this is something that we just inherit from our instinct, primordial instincts. Yeah. It's moving up or down. I don't know. Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, sorry. Can you repeat the question? So
if is it moving up or down? Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Last example of cognitive dissonance. This was mine. So basically, my Lego block, which had something to do with financial transaction and data, which had to do with financial transaction, it didn't make sense to me. And please note this sentence, it didn't make sense. This is what you usually tell yourself, this is what you usually exclaim when you see some piece of code and you cannot make sense out of it. Maybe you understand what's going on in terms of data flowing in and data flowing out and syntax and coding language in general, but you still don't understand why that piece of code is there and why the author did that. So I think this is very harmful for software design because a lot of time I saw that this act of communication, of writing classes or in general artifacts in our domains that mean something, but actually other people that they don't get the meaning. I mean, it doesn't just fulfill the role of being an ubiquitous language. You just don't know why those names are there and how they were created. And then not everyone agreed on the meaning of those names. So I wanted to give you also some suggestion for avoiding this kind of situation, because if it happens, it's painful. You will spend a lot of time not only trying to make sense of your code, but also trying to make it comply to actually the reality that you want to model. And this is difficult if you have things that they actually don't meet your reality in that moment. The first suggestion that I would like to give you, and this is the most important one, is that you have to be paranoid, and let me stress it, on naming and wording. For different reasons. When you are transposing some concept from the metaphor source to the metaphor destination, so you are creating a new concept, a new name, and associating it with a new concept, you are using the metaphor frame. We saw it. Now, if you use a metaphor frame that not everyone understands, or it's unusual for that context, you are offsetting a little bit the meaning of the new metaphor to make it comply to your vision of the metaphor. The subsequent metaphors that you will choose, or your team will choose, that will be created around this concept that you previously created, will be complying the metaphor frame. If you don't get the metaphor frame right the first time, or the previous time, then your subsequent choices will just get worse and worse and worse. It's just like an offset that gets bigger, bigger, and bigger regarding to the clarity of your domain language. An example can be the word engine. How many times do we see this word in the domain of software design? We have engines everywhere. Rendering engines and transaction engines everywhere. But do you ever did you ever stop and trying to think what an engine means in your domain? Because it can be a lot of things. I can think about an engine as something that takes some inputs, does something, and just throws something else out. Or I can think about an engine as coordination units between different moving parts. An engine can be anything. If you don't get this metaphor right, then it can be misleading for other people. I saw coders adding classes alongside the engine named gears, named fuel. This is clearly the wrong metaphor frame that you're choosing. Now, you're not anymore in the mechanical engineering. Why you want to have a fuel class? Maybe I can understand the intent of that class, but definitely I don't think this is the right metaphor frame, unless you are modeling in the mechanical engineering domain. Otherwise, this is not probably the best thing. So, second reason why you should be paranoid about the wording and the naming is that, you see, when you associate, when you come up with a new name and you associate it with a concept, you are basically giving a label. You're printing a label and attaching to the new concept. And this is going probably to stick there forever. Why? Because neuropsychologically speaking, our mind is a self-maximizing system. It means that every time I have a new experience, this experience creates something like a canyon in my mind, okay? Metaphor, canyon. A canyon in my mind. And every time I encounter the same experience, this canyon gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So if you name something and you associate this name with a concept, and then you start sharing this meaning, this association between the name and the concept with other people, it will be very difficult if you realize that I named that concept a little bit wrongly because it's misleading for a lot of people. It will be super difficult to remove that label from the concept and give it another label, because everyone will understand that that labels means that concept. If I want to convince you that this is not a clicker, this is a lamp, or this is an elephant, you will not believe me, but not because you don't want to believe me, but because your mind is a self-maximizing system, and this is not matching your experience. This is not an elephant. This is a clicker. It's just a label, just a name. But it just works like this. So think about it before you publish your names, your metaphors out of your mind, or out of your teams, because changing a label in your mind maybe can be easy, or maybe not. Changing it in your team is 10 times more difficult. Changing it in a company, you cannot do this. You really cannot do this. And please don't fall for it's a temporary name thing, because it's never a temporary name. Once you name something, it's going to be there forever, forever. Or when you give a version, I don't like this service, we need to build a new one. Let's call it service version 2. Everyone will call it service version 2 forever. Even if you want to remove it, because maybe you deprecate the old one, and then you don't need the version 2 anymore, but that's going to be service version 2 forever. It's just very dangerous. You need to be aware of this. Third, motivation why you should be paranoid is because you must honor the complexity of your domain. I saw this mistake a lot of times. People, okay, guys, we have this concept that needs to do something in our design. Let's give it a name. It's an item. It's a product. It's a line. It's a user. This is just not honoring, and this is not just acknowledging that our domain is complex. And if you don't find the right name, the right precise name for the concept that you are naming, then you're going to fall again for a wrong metaphor frame, because if the concept of if the name of the metaphor source is too broad, like user is, then you have a whole bunch of concepts that you can bring into your metaphor frame and create a new metaphor. This is not precise enough, and our domains are already so complex that we cannot afford to have this kind of uncertainty on the naming. Another suggestion that I found useful is to exercise constant awareness. What do I mean by constant awareness? Well, every time we resort to a metaphor and create a new name, we do it in our subconscious process. I mean, we don't even think about it. Okay, this plus this, okay, new name. Stop, take a step back, and think about, okay, how did I arrive to this point? How did I invent this new name? How did I create the metaphor? This helps you in trying to understand which metaphor frame you selected, and also to do an introspection on if it's the right metaphor frame that you want to bring into your new domain, or maybe it's not, or maybe we need to think about it. But constant awareness comes from within yourself. It's something that will help you naming things properly. Maybe they will not be the right names, but for sure it will help you improve the naming. Another suggestion, very useful one, is you need to ask feedback. So when you create a new metaphor and consequently you create a new name for a concept, at some point you will publish this label, you will publish this name, and you will tell this name to your teammates or to your company, and you will immediately see if the cognitive dissonance is kicking in. You can see that you can get this information from verbal feedback, like, what are you talking about? Of course, they didn't get the metaphor. Okay, fair enough. But sometimes it's more subtle. When you try to explain something and you are introducing a new concept and you see arms crossed, or they move slightly aside, or they raise their eyebrows, I mean, you get some body language feedback. You should be aware that probably they are not getting the metaphor. The ligament is not strong enough for them to get the communication act. So you should be always careful. You should pay always attention to this kind of feedback. And last suggestion, always document the meaning of your names. Of course, this is not something new in DDD. We have the concept of ubiquitous language. Ubiquitous language that need to be maintained, that needs to be documented. So we have ideally we have a list of we have a vocabulary of terms and their related meaning, but I don't think this is enough. I think we should also document, for example, the etymology of your names. So how did you come up with these names, and why, and what was the context? And what's the relation with the domain? Why? How was the synthetic process of putting more concepts together and coming up with the new name? So this was my last suggestion. I think we just barely scratched the surface of the metaphorical process. I mean, you have a huge amount of studies and research in the neuropsychological field about metaphors, and this overlaps quite well with what we do with the way we design our software. You can clearly see the path that your mind is taking for the decision making about names. This is clearly, it's there. The overlapping is there. The concepts are the same. But I will stop here for now, because otherwise we will continue probably for 1 week or 1 month on this topic. And we will go down, allow me one last metaphor, a very deep rabbit hole. Thank you very much. Questions? Yes.
Thank you for this wonderful talk. What do you think about the practice of suffixing aggregate or command or event to classes?
Yes. I see this as an anti-pattern in general, because those are technical patterns, so tactical patterns, so something that the developers know, the business doesn't know, but we are more in the argument of your technical language is leaking into your domain language. So this is, I think, even more important reason for not doing that. It's useful, though, to associate, if you have those names associated with your classes, you will start questioning, okay, why did I appended this suffix to the class? Okay, is it an aggregate? What does aggregate means for me? What does entity means for me? I think this is also part of the problems that you are having in the DDD community, because at the beginning, we had the blue book explaining what an aggregate was and what an entity was, but then maybe the associated metaphors or concept were not completely understood by everyone. So it's always better to make things explicit. I think this is exactly related to what we advocate every day for DDD.
Hello, yeah. The other metaphor we see is design patterns. So adapters, bridge, and everything. So to me, I've grown up naming my classes adapters and so forth, because that makes the language very clear and crisp to the other developers. They know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm using an adapter.
Yeah.
So would you still, that doesn't change in your suggestions, right? If I'm using design patterns, continue to use adapter, or you would find the synergy between the business domain names and the design patterns, or you don't see it that way?
Yeah, again, it's more or less the same situation. Usually when you get accustomed to design patterns and you know how and when to use them, automatically you make their name disappear from your code base. Nevertheless, of course, this is the ideal situation. So when you are dealing with, I don't know, junior developers and developers that are more on the technical side, because it's okay, we can have those, and they love to use design patterns in names explicitly, at least we should agree on what adapter is. Can you define an adapter? No, probably not in general terms, or maybe yes in Wikipedia, but I mean, I never saw a single, I never saw two implementation of the adaptant pattern which were doing exactly the same thing. So again, I think it's just it just gets to the point of agreeing on what an adapter is for you as a team.
I have a comment though. I think it's even worse when people use names as patterns, but actually things are not that, you know. So if like somebody calls strategy and it's not strategy, you know.
Do you have any particular metaphors that you like to apply to software development in general? Like, do you have any favorites that crop up a lot?
Like an anthology of metaphors? No, I don't know. It depends on the... You know, anthology is a metaphor. It means like you're collecting flowers. No, actually not. It depends on the domain which I'm working on, and metaphors are something that, by definition, you create in that moment. And yeah, of course, you can resort to metaphors that you already have in your experience, like hanging, for example. But no, I don't have my favorites. Actually, I'm sorry, I cannot answer this question.
Hi.
Hey.
Is it on? Hi. Would you have anything that? So you work on a multicultural team, I imagine. If you're
Correct.
Italian, working with Germans, maybe a few other nationalities.
We have 25 nationalities.
Wow. And so there's a lot of like idiosyncratic metaphors through all those. Like, how do you get people like, oh, that means something horrible from where I come from. This means something awesome. How do you guys manage that negotiation?
Yeah, actually, this is more a topic for co-living more than software development. Still, it's there. I don't know if I should call it a problem or just a situation for multicultural teams, but I think you can have this attitude that helps a lot. You have to just be aware that people develop their own language and they have their own culture. So never assume that never assume something in general. So never assume that they are being jerked, they want to hurt your feelings. Always ask for feedback, because this is the only thing, this is the only way you can make sure of the meaning of the words. This is valid for the relationships, this is valid also for software design. But yes, that concern is there, and you can see this every day in our office, for example. It's tough, but you can manage it.
So my question is, the metaphor, when we use it for naming, like the picture of the canyon, in the end is kind of simplification, right? Because the metaphor is, in our mind, is a bit more complex. We see, it looks like this experience will make this looks like a, like a canyon. There's something that flows through it. But what I mean, the process to come to a simple 1 or 2 words is has some background, and you mentioned something about documentation of this.
Yes.
Maybe. Do you have some experience? How do you do that? Do you have some experience with that? Do you document your metaphors somewhere for the?
Well, like I said,
process?
it's just about enriching your ubiquitous language with the etymology of your terms. So if you have the doubt that your terms, some terms of your language, they are not clear because they were invented. I mean, it's clear that the terminology is coming from the business language, but sometimes the business evolves and you have to come up with new terms, and these new terms need to be documented. So everyone knows what a warehouse is, but maybe you will come up with a new concept related to a warehouse, and you want to know where this concept is coming from, why it was invented, and how it was put together as a name, as a concept. So it's just about enriching the vocabulary of the ubiquitous language with the sourcing of your metaphor. All right.
If there are no more questions, I actually have one.
Please.
So far we've been talking about kind of negative side of the metaphors, and you were warning about being careful and maybe when not to use them, right? But on the other side, you gave us good examples of good metaphors, which became standards. And if you think it's true that software jargon is full of metaphors, like if we're talking about pattern names, right? Like those are clearly metaphors. Adapter, it came from physical world, and pattern itself probably is a metaphor as well. So
software is a metaphor.
Software is a metaphor, that's right. So is there an advice or some sort of sign that a metaphor you came up with is actually maybe a good one?
I didn't get the question. You're asking me how to judge if a metaphor is a good one?
Right, right. Like, so let's say I came up with a metaphor, right? So is there a chance? Maybe it will be as good as garbage collector, but...
Ask people, is everyone getting it? Probably it's a good metaphor. Does it make sense? When I say makes sense, doesn't kick in the cognitive dissonance in people's mind? Probably it's a good metaphor. That's the only way I think you can verify it, because in your mind, everything makes sense. It's what you think. I mean, you will be a little bit crazy to think that, you will be fighting with your own reasoning, no? But this is not true if you communicate with others. Probably you need to verify that. This is the only way, I think.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.